We are all too familiar with the feeling of powerlessness. Perhaps that meditation gave a little bit of that sense. A few years ago, COVID swept into our lives and reminded us of how fragile our human bodies are and how fragile the institutions that keep us healthy are. COVID arose in the midst of national political climate that continues to overwhelm our sense of reason. The word unprecedented became virtually meaningless in those years. This month, war in Israel and Palestine rips away any sense of reason or control, and now this week is Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Add that to your list of issues that seem beyond our power. Are you ready for some statistics? In California, there are over 170,000 people without a place to call home. That is roughly the number of residents of the city of Garden Grove or Oceanside. Specifically in Orange County, records suggest 10,000 people are living without permanent homes. 10,000 of our neighbors in Orange County. With such large challenges in our world, homelessness, global warming, fragile democracy, the list goes on. With such huge issues, I am reminded of the question, how do you eat an elephant? The answer, of course, is one bite at a time. Anyone who has accomplished some major undertaking knows that it started with a relatively tiny action. A college degree is an accumulation of many, many study sessions. A marathon starts with running a half mile. Saving for retirement, maybe a better example, happens one paycheck at a time. Any of those accomplishments would seem overwhelming if all we focused on was the big picture. But when we break it down, when we do what we can in the moment, we make progress that once seemed really naive. Focusing on the smaller tasks, the one right in front of us, also brings into focus our first principle: the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Because the big boogeyman, scary disaster approach to problems becomes so abstract that it's just numbers. In those giant problems, the big picture is made up of hundreds of thousands of individual human beings, each one with a particular story and background. When we take the one small action in front of us, we're able to see one person having a dinner or a winter coat, or perhaps even one family having access to affordable housing. Most of you are familiar with the work of Friends of Orange County Detainees, or FOCD. For 8 years, they sent volunteers to visit people in immigrant detention centers. They also help people recently released from detention to transfer safely to their next step. Over the years, FOCD volunteers conducted over 8,000 visits to people and helped hundreds of people safely transition into their next steps of living. The success of that organization is rooted in how this all started. It was basically a group of Tapestry members studying the big issue of immigration. They learned about how dysfunctional and vengeful it was. Instead of getting overwhelmed and giving up, they looked at the gifts that they had and realized there are about 1,000 people in immigrant detention here in Orange County, or there were way back then. Their way of making a difference became clear. Visit people, one at a time. Simply recognizing their basic human dignity, literally just visiting, could make a big difference. Personally, myself, knowing a few of the lives that had been transformed by that organization, lives that were literally in some cases saved, I am humbled by that whole thing. That success was built on what Bev Huff calls the starfish approach. If you don't know the story, I find it hard to believe that you don't know the story, but I'll tell it anyway. A young girl was walking on the beach where thousands of starfish had been washed up during the storm. When she came to each starfish, she picked it up and threw it back into the ocean. People watched her with amazement and amusement. She had been doing this for a while when a man approached and said, "Little girl, why are you doing this? Look at this beach. You can't save all these starfish. You can't make a difference." She seemed crushed at first. But after a few moments, she bent down, picked up another starfish, hurled it into the ocean. Then she looked up at that man and replied, "Well, I made a difference for that one." The old man looked at the girl, inspired by what she had done, and he joined her in throwing starfish back into the sea. To be honest, I had heard this starfish story so many times it seems saccharine. But when I see the individual lives that have been transformed by tapestry programs, I have to tell you, my faith in the starfish approach runs quite deep. The same approach is what lit a fire under Bev and Scott and Tapestry's work supporting Afghan refugees to settle here in Orange County. One family at a time, one medical procedure, one job, one degree at a time. New Beginnings is changing people's lives and perhaps saving them. A Tapestry leader who takes this butterfly effect seriously is Karen Nichols. In all her organizing here, she has kept projects and volunteer commitments to manageable, bite-sized portions. With the Women's Rights Action Group, has taken on a huge variety of projects, each one in their own way chipping away at the overwhelming monster of gender inequality and misogyny. The main point of this sermon is for us to apply the butterfly effect in our own lives. Our seemingly small actions contribute to bigger change in the world. I want us to consider that providing stable housing to an individual is also the beginning of change on a much larger scale. While I'm hopeful about making housing accessible to everyone, I am not naive. Most of the people experiencing homelessness have layers of challenges. This Veterans Day, we remember that the mental and physical health impact of military service has a huge factor contributing to homelessness. Other mental health and physical health issues can make finding a home or paying rent difficult. Domestic abuse launches many women and children into homelessness. The challenge may be as simple as not having work that pays enough to afford housing here in Orange County. Any one of those obstacles would be difficult for someone with resources to navigate. But imagine digging out of one of those situations without safe, stable housing, a place to prepare nutritious food, or a place to bathe. One of the presentations on homelessness that I really appreciated was an honest look at the role of addiction in homelessness. Now, if we are honest, most of us, perhaps all of us, find some way of numbing ourselves a little bit and seeking comfort in times of stress, whether that's binging on Netflix or a scotch or maybe even reasonable use of legal marijuana. We all have our outlets that we turn to for stress and relief. Imagine for a moment if the stress level was not having a roof over your head or knowing where your kid would eat or bathe next. And imagine if all of your coping mechanisms had to be carried out on a public sidewalk. How might you be seen by passers-by? Addiction of all sorts is an under-recognized pandemic in American life. People with all the resources in the world fight tooth and nail every single day for sobriety. It is cruel to expect anyone to find sobriety without the foundation of a safe place that they can call home. For all these reasons, a roof over someone's head, a door that they can lock, a space to prepare meals, a place to call home is actually the very small and necessary first change that might lead to more dramatic changes down the line. And financially speaking, it is a smaller step than many know. Providing housing for those in need is more affordable than supporting homelessness. This is really important, so I'm going to say it again. Housing people is more affordable than supporting homelessness. The cost to the community for a person to live in chronic homelessness is about $100,579 per year. That wild price tag includes trips to the emergency room, law enforcement encounters, and other really unnecessary expenses related to someone living on the streets. Providing supportive housing, though, with supportive services costs about $51,500 per person per year. The financial difference is astounding. Providing housing really is the smaller, but exponentially more impactful intervention to take. Perhaps it's not as tiny as the flap of a butterfly's wing, but an affordable apartment is the small start that changes lives. I spoke a lot, probably too much, about the life challenges that sometimes accompany homelessness. Here in Orange County, it has been documented over and over again that the leading cause of homelessness is the lack of affordable housing. I don't know if you all know this. In Lake Forest, I just searched this week, apartment rents start at around $2,200 per month. And that's probably cheaper than Irvine or Mission Viejo. Finding first and last month's rent plus a security deposit, you're looking at probably $6,000 in cash to move in. If you have decent credit and rental history, that is a huge hurdle for someone who hasn't had a regular place to sleep or to eat or to bathe, or just someone who's been out of work for a very short time. Housing and financial stability is tenuous for many of our neighbors. A major health issue, a loss of a wage earner in the family. When the margins are slim, a minor setback can easily land people on the streets. But there are butterfly opportunities for us. Because the primary factor contributing to homelessness is the availability of housing, if you own a rental property, you can be part of the solution. United Way has a pretty robust infrastructure to help make your space available to people who qualify for affordable housing. That would mean guaranteed rental income. There's a clear tenant selection process, and owners are protected with coverage for any damages. Voucher holders get support for 12 months of rental stabilization. It's a win-win for property owners who qualify. Now, you don't have to be a landlord to help. I admit that is a very big butterfly wing to be flapping. Most members of this community, though, have some resources to make some difference. Like I said before, the feeling of helplessness is a trap. It's psychological quicksand. The best way out of that feeling is doing a few small things that are in our power. The simplest opportunity is participating in food drives that we regularly have at Tapestry. I know you all go to the grocery store. I do too. Picking up an extra non-perishable item at your next trip to the store could literally mean a family having dinner on their table in a couple of weeks. Food drives are also a great way to involve young people in this tangible act of giving and supporting those in need. We also collect winter clothing and toiletries on occasion, and right now, as you heard earlier in the service, we're running a virtual collection for students of Silverado schools in Mission Viejo. There are lots and lots of these one-time giving opportunities that can add up. You may be tired of hearing about them. I see them as a gift, an opportunity. If you enjoy cooking, something very different, or the idea of offering a satisfying meal, you might think about jumping into the program providing meals at the Laguna Beach or the Laguna Canyon shelter twice a month. And that can mean a broad spectrum of things. You might cook an elaborate main entree for 40 people, or it could mean smearing some butter on store-bought dinner rolls. It is a very broad spectrum of how you might help. Or if you are a baker, our Community Loaves program is amazing. Rick DeBello is organizing Orange County bakers, I love the creative problem solving here, to bake healthy breads and energy cookies to supply them to local food pantries. After the service, we'll get to sample some of that bread and some of those cookies with our social hour. If you're better with words than you are with your hands or your pocketbook, try writing to City Council about housing issues. And there are a lot of housing issues. These pop up in every city, and having local residents to speak to those is really important. That's a big asset that we have spreading all the way from Newport Beach down to San Clemente. Rona and her team can give you talking points for those, or if you're a loudmouth like me, come show up in person and tell them what you think with your own impactful words. Or finally, if you're ready for a deeper dive, Welcoming Neighbors Home is working with the Kennedy Commission and other partners to train communities to be advocates for affordable housing. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had 20 people here at Tapestry being trained to be advocates in Spanish and in English. If, like me, you feel that sinking feeling of sadness and powerlessness when you drive by someone asking for money on the corner, if you shake your head in overwhelm at the stories in the newspaper, there is an opportunity for you to act somewhere in a small way. For the 1,001 ways that you have helped your neighbors in need, thank you. In so many ways, working with the leaders of this congregation has been wildly inspiring to me. I also know and see that those leaders are tired, y'all. You can learn more about housing and homelessness after the service on the patio from Welcoming Neighbors Home. You might also pick up a purple flag as you head on your way to start conversations with your neighbors. You can learn more about those purple flags outside. I know not everyone is going to get fired up about this particular issue. I hope you will consider taking a small action to address whatever big boogeyman disaster problem keeps you up at night. Because I have faith we can eat that elephant one bite at a time. Amen.